What I like is that you're formal and casual at the same time, though.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Arab TV one more time, and I'm your host, Zaid Faransso. With me today is an interesting personality. Tina D'Angelo is my guest today, and she's an attorney and a partner at D'Angelo and McDonald Law Firm. And we will be talking about something interesting, but we will hold it for the moment. We'll start by saying hello to Tina. How are you?
Hi, fine, thank you.
And we will welcome you to our show and ask you to introduce yourself to the public. So, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm an attorney in Los Gatos, and my background is mostly in real estate litigation and real estate, anything related to real estate, basically. But I also have an interest in estate planning, and my focus is more toward that these days, and I'm here just to share with you a little bit about estate planning. My real estate background has included mostly trial work, real estate sales, marketing, transactions. So I always try to add layers of experience to my professional portfolio, and estate planning is one of those layers. I'm the kind of person that always likes to learn and is always looking for different ways to provide service to people who might need it.
Estate planning. So you just gave away the topic of our discussion right now. Pleasure. So I'm going to take a look back in time and ask you what pushed you to this field. I come from a totally different background, and to me, law is that mysterious field that I know nothing of. What fascinated you about this part, or about this industry, or this profession?
Well, intellectually, I've always been interested in real estate and tax. I find them very stimulating intellectually.
Quite unusual to hear a person saying that they're interested in tax.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's not the numbers, it's the policy. The tax policy, there's sort of a sociological aspect to it that fascinates me. And that combines in estate planning. And what is also nice about it is that it's a very people-oriented field. Even though I enjoy litigation and the game of chess that is litigation, I really enjoy connecting with people, and just that when people trust you to come and share that intimate time with you about what they want to happen, if they become incapacitated, or how they want their assets to be distributed, ultimately one day, when we all pass, we have to think about those things. It's a real experience that I really treasure.
So it's a person who thought of something most people don't usually think of. So it's quite interesting for sure. It started from real estate and jumped into estate management. We're going to ask the big question right now. What is estate planning? Yeah. What is estate, if I may ask first?
Well, estate is just, I think it's a poor word. It's a word that we've inherited from, just historically, and it sounds so archaic. People don't really know immediately what that means. But the truth is that everybody has an estate. We all have an estate. And an estate is basically everything that you've accumulated or owned throughout your life. And it can be $10, the value can be $10, or it can be $10 million. And whatever it is, that's your estate. And it's important to think about it and think about what are the best ways that you can protect that estate. It's hard-earned money that you've made throughout your life, or they're personal things that mean a lot to you. So how can you best protect those things? And how can you kind of sit down and think about what's going to happen if someday I become incapacitated? Who's going to manage this? Who is going to ultimately receive this. Sometimes people have built a family business and they value the opportunity to really sit and think about who's going to take over this business. How can we protect it in a way that taxes are minimized, expenses are minimized, liability is minimized. So
basically, we're talking about the collective worth of a person along a lifetime, and we're not specifically mentioning physical things because we're leaning more toward, or we're evolving into a society that cherishes more things that are not visible. We have a lot of virtual stuff. So estate encompasses all those definitions, from cash money into property, into businesses, into things that might not have any physical value, right?
Well, even sentimental things that have sentimental value would be included in your estate. It doesn't have to be physical, it can be intellectual property or, just basically anything that's important to you.
Anything that you can claim or own.
Yes,
right.
Basically. And honestly, it's not just about those things, it's about your own health care. If something should happen to you, who's going to make decisions for you about your medical care and decisions? What are those instructions that you would like to give somebody? In many cases, people want their spouse to make those decisions. Well, what if your spouse has predeceased you? What if you both became incapacitated at the same time? There are questions that you really need to sit down and think through. Well, I think you're better served if you sit down and think through them rather than just let life happen. Also, what could happen to your minor children if you're in an accident, you and your spouse are in an accident? The last thing that you would want your minor children to have to do is be taken care of into protective custody and have a court hearing about who's going to take care of these children at a time that's already difficult. So estate planning encompasses all of that. It also just encompasses your wishes if you want to make a charitable donation someday, or if you want to establish a trust to take care of your pets. For all those reasons, it's valuable to sit down for a period of time with a professional and think through these things.
So we've expanded it from simply taking care of what you have into making decisions, future plans about things that might happen, such as health-related decisions about childcare, and about who takes care of what and what will happen to this and that.
Yes, we had a friend about a year ago who was in a tragic accident, and he had a little 5-year-old girl, and the mother and he were both killed.
Oh.
Yeah, it was really a tragedy, but this poor little girl was just sitting in the back seat of the car, and nobody knew what to do with this girl. So this poor young girl, after losing her parents, was taken by the county, and there had to be a court hearing to decide who's going to take care of her. And there were competing parties, because when someone passes, people start to feel really strong and they want a piece of, the person who died, and so they desperately want maybe to take care of the child. And so the last thing that you want in a situation like that is not to know what the person's wishes were. So it's really important to memorialize, what your wishes are for your minor children, what your instructions are, and how you would like them to be raised.
And I think in decisions like this, the upper word would be for the county, and no matter what people said or claimed or what kind of affection or passion that they projected, there will still be a point of doubt as for, is it a safe family? We're giving the child to another relative or to a friend. Is that correct? Is that not correct? Exactly. So a decision will most definitely help make that or ease that transition.
Exactly. Why not preempt all that? Just take care of it, designate a guardian in advance and then eliminate the issue altogether. Same with if someday you become incapacitated. Unfortunately, studies show maybe half of seniors become incapacitated at some point. So why not eliminate the question mark and sit down and really decide, who do I want to make decisions for me, medical decisions for me, if that happens to me? And if that person is not available, who would be a backup? It's not just a matter of saying, oh, well, I have 3 children, one of them will do it. Sometimes children disagree. Maybe one lives in another state. It's important to really think through the logistics, and just for peace of mind to have a plan.
Yeah, so we're talking about the field of durable power of attorney and living will and decisions about the end of life, if we might say. Is that right?
Exactly. I mean, you said durable power of attorney. Even your finances, if you're incapacitated, who do you trust to handle your business? Why not think through those things and make those decisions now? And it's not like they're unchangeable. You can revisit them whenever you want.
Yes.
But at least you'll have the peace of mind, and you'll spare your family the uncertainty and the hassle and the hardship and pain, during an already difficult time.
Yeah, and I think that these situations always seem to be far in the distant future for most people, and kind of sad, so they don't want to tackle it. And whenever an older member of the family starts to talk about these things, they will always be people will stop them and say, no, don't talk about this. It's too early. We don't want to say that right now. And you'll live forever, hopefully.
Yeah.
The other side is, I guess, probably a lot of these scenarios sound like they're logical. So we're assuming that a person got sick and, oh yeah, of course, his daughter will take care of him. But when you get to the point and you look at all the technicalities and the details of the matter, it's not as easy as that.
No.
Making the decision is always full of those tiny little details or tiny little additions that make it harder and harder.
And like you said, a lot of people just don't want to look at those possibilities. It's a difficult subject. I find that people are either total planners and they're ready to face these decisions head on, make decisions, or they want to avoid it and not look at it. But I think more peace of mind comes by facing these issues, and it's really giving things and assets to your heirs is a generous thing, but I think planning is part of that generosity. When you plan, you're really sparing a lot of heartache, a lot of discord, and you're just really making things clear and preserving your family harmony.
Makes a lot of sense. Looking at our community, what's the percentage that we can think of people who are planners, of people who seek help in that field and come to you and ask for future planning and think of all the things that we were just talking about?
I would imagine it's a very low percentage. I always admire people who have done their homework, but especially, I do see a lot of mailers from estate planning attorneys here and there. So you would think that need has been met, but for some reason, a lot of people don't really think through what could happen, and they don't plan. And I think it's because of what you said. It's just who wants to think about my child not having parents, or anybody dying? But it's kind of life's, we all don't live forever, and
exactly.
Well,
just looking around and trying to remember a lot of stories that I've heard about situations like the one you mentioned, where people were literally amazed, what should we do right now? They were baffled. I can't make up my mind, and no matter how much logic I put in my thinking, there's no way I can reach a reasonable solution. The only way I can make up a real decision is by asking the deceased person, or by asking this person who is now diagnosed with dementia, what do you want?
Yeah.
Which is now past the moment, right?
Mm. Yeah. I was going to add to that I think people don't realize also that there is a plan. If you don't plan, there is a plan, and that plan is the state's plan. So let's say you don't have a will or you don't have a trust. There is a set of laws, and it's called intestate succession. Intestate succession, how your assets will be distributed. And the law doesn't care about your privacy. If you don't have a trust, for example, your assets are going to be public information. I know a lot of people, if I ask them, do you care about your privacy? Do you want your assets to be public? They would all say no, but they don't realize that when you go through a court process called probate, that your assets are public information. So if you don't plan, that information will be public, and you'll be subject to predators and creditors coming out of the woodwork.
So we're talking not just about the fact that what you have is publicized, but also, again, the non-physical aspect of it, all the sentimental issues, whatever you've written, whatever you've said. People might come into the house trying to settle some financial issues.
Oh, definitely. There are creditors that look at these court files, and they try and target people based on the information that they find. What else? I think people don't realize that there are laws that dictate where these assets go. And what I do is when people come in my office, I explain to them where their assets would go under the law. And I ask if they would like to see something different happen than what's there. And 100% of the time, they want something different than what the law states. And then lastly, I think they don't realize that the probate process is generally a long process. It can take a year and a half here in California to really process, what I will say, somebody's estate. Mm-hmm. And it can be expensive. It can be 5% or more of the gross value of the estate. So a lot of people would rather spend a little money and see a professional now than burden their family and loved ones with a long process, an expensive process, and public process later.
Let me ask this. Do we have a target age group? Are we talking about, or are we saying that people who should think of that seriously are people who are beyond a certain age limit, or should everybody think about it? And how early should one pay attention to this detail?
Yeah, the irony is that historically, I think people thought estate planning is just something for older people to do. And naturally, when you do get older, I'm sure you think about those things. But estate planning really is just as important for parents with minor children. And it's important for anybody who has any asset that they want to protect or pass along. Even somebody who's not married, doesn't have children, I'm sure it's important to them, to him or her, if you ask him or her, what do you want to have happen to your wealth if something should happen? I'm sure they don't want it, I'm sure they have something in mind, but they just haven't really planned.
We all have that sense that we feel more secure when we're in control, right? So this is part of our control process, to know that we have a plan for what will happen.
Yeah, I find that when people actually do the plan, they become so satisfied, and they feel like they really thought it through and exerted their control of how they would like to see things, transpire.
Okay, let's assume that I decided to do this process right now. What kind of things I need to take into consideration? How does the process go from the earliest phases?
Well, what we usually do is we would provide you an estate planning worksheet. And that worksheet basically would have you think about all the things that you might own, and also who you would like to pick as your, as your power of attorney, or as your trustee, or what have you. So we try to get everything down on paper, and then we'll reserve a 2-hour appointment so that we can discuss what would be the best plan under those circumstances, and in light of your wishes.
So among the tools that one might think of, what do you have? What are the available tools?
A lot of people focus on having a will, and a will is a good thing to have. There's a phrase that I've heard: where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a trust, there's a better way. And I find that to be true. With a will, you will give your instructions. However, it will be public information, and it guarantees probate. So it guarantees that you're going to go through a court process with judicial supervision. It's going to be involved. Maybe it'll take a year and a half, and it's going to be expensive. A trust is often preferable because a trust is really a private agreement. So it doesn't need to be publicized. And there is some judicial supervision, but it's not the same as with a will. You basically appoint somebody that you really trust as the trustee, and they carry out your instructions in the trust. So a trust is always is really a good tool.
And that
people use.
encompasses the two fields of managing estate in the form of physical ownership and managing decision making.
Well, yeah. I mean, the trustee does have some decision-making power, but for like healthcare, you would have an advanced healthcare directive that would appoint somebody to make medical decisions for you, and would clarify what those decisions would be. And then also, you would have a durable power of attorney that for somebody who would manage your assets if you become incapacitated. And then, as I mentioned, you would also want to appoint guardians for any minor children.
Oh, and that too. It keeps, skipping my imagination, all the possibilities one can face at a random situation like the one like the story you told. I bet you hear a lot of these stories of situations that are so complicated.
Yeah, I was just reading somewhere that I think accidents are like the 5th cause of death in the United States, and that surprised me. It was like cancer, or no, it was heart disease, cancer, some other issues, and then it was accidents. So here we like to think that those are rare occurrences, but they do happen.
Cumulatively, probably, yes, if we added all the causes of accidents, most definitely.
Yeah.
And some of these are the most unanticipated among the causes of death. So a patient with a heart problem would know that he has a limited life.
Exactly.
And maybe start to think of what to do. An older person who was diagnosed with cancer might consider working on his will or deciding who has the durable power of attorney. But a person who is healthy, enjoying his life, going back and forth to work every day, he would never think of that. And that's the person who usually has the accident.
Yeah, exactly.
People, yeah.
Estate planning is also really important for blended families because the way the law is written, it's kind of written with a more traditional situation in mind. So if you have a blended family where you have children from another mother, let's just say, and you remarry someone who has kids, or you have kids together, it's not an unlikely scenario that your kids from your previous marriage will be high and dry if you don't leave any plan. They could be literally disinherited or left with nothing. So I just want to emphasize that for people with blended families, estate planning is really important also. Also, people that have high net worth, traditionally they've really focused in or zeroed in on estate planning because there was a really, the estate tax now is 40%. So to kind of avoid or get around estate taxes, wealthy people would come to estate planning attorneys. Now we're lucky that the estate tax exemption is pretty high. It's about $5.25 million. So you could literally leave your kids or whoever $5.25 million, 10 and a half if you're a couple, and not pay any estate taxes. Okay. So that's a positive development.
That sure is. I'm going to point to a fact that you mentioned about extended families or blended families. What is the de facto rule in this case? Is it always that the second or the previous marriage will be kind of forgotten or left unattended to?
The way it works is that the community property that you have, your wife will get the community property that you have. And community property is whatever you've earned through your efforts during the marriage. Any separate property you have, and that would be maybe some income that you earned before this marriage or something you've inherited, that would be split. The separate property would be split. 1/3 would go toward, 1/3 or 1/2 could go toward your current wife, and the rest would go to the children. So essentially, what could happen is that one half of your separate property could go to your new wife, and your children from your previous marriage wouldn't see any of that, because if you passed first, then those assets would go to whoever she named. I could really describe a lot of interesting scenarios. When people come to my office, they're always fascinated to see how things could end up. But people tend to want to protect their assets from the prospect of a divorcing spouse, or the situation where somebody might have creditors, like professionals, attorneys, accountants, medical professionals. They tend to want to protect their assets from lawsuits that might arise from their practice. So there's a lot of techniques to do that. And trusts are one. People form LLCs or corporations to protect their assets from creditors. So asset protection is a part of estate planning as well.
And these are just a few examples that we could come up with. I bet in your field you run across all the possible random scenarios that one can think, or probably even the ones that one cannot think of, because this is the essence. It's planning for what you cannot think of.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
And the law is written just very generally, what would an average person
Just
do.
for the traditional
But what you
story.
find is everybody's situation
Nothing
is totally
is-
different.
yeah.
And just like, I play bridge with seniors, and there's a different hand of cards that is played every single time. Every situation is different. And that's what makes the field really interesting for me.
So I would assume people, after this discussion, people would start to get interested in pursuing such a path. How can you be reached?
Well, people can contact me at my business, which is 408-884-8565, or email me at tina@d'angelomcdonald.com. Like I said, we start with an estate planning worksheet, and then we have a meeting for about 2 hours. We reserve 2 hours so we can decide what is the best approach and strategy for you and your family.
There will sure be some people who are pretty interested in that, I bet.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for the insight. Thank you for the information. I, for myself, didn't know a lot of that, and it was really an enlightening half hour. Thank you for coming, and thank you for watching.
My pleasure. Thank you.